I heard your talks on the one world tax and the international money and all that.
Mm-hmm.
And I just wondered, as Christians, what do we do with our money and our investments and our real estate to prepare for this? Do we just go on as usual, or do you have some recommendations?
No, there's nothing you can do to prepare for it, Jane, unfortunately, or I would have put something out there. The only thing you can do, the best thing you can do, is work hard to get out of debt if you have any. If you don't have any debt, then you're in a very good situation. But remember, people, we have to realize that debt is a form of, it's a monetary issue. And if there's a monetary adjustment changes, it's going to impact our debt. And it likely impacted in a negative way. So I would, that's one thing you can definitely be proactive doing, is getting out of debt and staying out of debt. And it may take, some time to do that, but that's one thing you could do. As far as protecting our assets, it's going to be, we can try. I could probably write a book on how many things you could probably do, but I couldn't write it because I don't believe they're going to work. It is not logical that they would work. It was like a caller that I just had. Well, since the government is going haywire, shouldn't we be in something non-governmental controlled? The problem is, because there is no legitimate accountability for that kind of currency, the government, all they have to do is say it's illegal, and there's all the government control you'll ever need or ever want, and or they'll ever want. So it'll be the end of it. Those kinds of things aren't going to help. Your gold is not going to help, or your silver, because it is not a currency, and it's not going to be allowed to be a currency, because if it were allowed to be a currency, it would undermine the very currency that the globalists are trying to make sure that they can penetrate every aspect of people's lives with it, and it would undermine that. So you have to, at some point in time, we've got to come to the realization that we're talking about the governments of the world coming together for this effort. And whether we like it or not, and we will only have ourselves to blame, we're going to be the victims of that with absolutely no recourse, because the recourse for us was 2-3 years ago, maybe longer, and maybe still exists today. But it would require people banding together, which we're not willing to do or not do, because you have half the people saying, oh, that's a crazy conspiracy theory. And we have another half of that half, the other half, saying, oh, well, that's not true. You'll be able to use your gold, and people want to believe that, so they do believe it. And you've got that whole contingent out there. And then you've got other people that are saying, well, it doesn't matter. Whatever it is, and I'll just get by with whatever they tell me to get by with. So it is really a difficult situation. I certainly would say exercise common sense. If we think there is going to be a crisis, so to speak, with markets in general, financial markets I'm talking about in general, then we should probably do our best to limit our exposure to those financial markets. Well, then that begs the question, what do I do then? I need income. I would like to see my money grow. And the only way I can do that is exposure to the markets. Well, you have to make that decision. If you need that, then you just do it and ride it out as long as you can and hope for the best. But there's always going to be a counter to anything that we do. But I would minimize risk. Do I think we need to do that today? I don't. Do I think we need to do it sometime probably next year? Likely, very likely. And I think we'll know that by the middle of the fourth quarter this year. It depends on what happens. We are totally, and everything that we do to protect ourselves, everything that we do to kind of regroup and change our strategies on things, everything, particularly financial things, everything is dependent upon legislative process, which is the first time in my 35 years as an economist that I can sit back and say, oh yeah, that we have lots of history about doing data prep for this kind of crisis. We have zero experience. We have never been. I remember in the late 70s, we only cared about two things: an interruption in the flow of oil and a geopolitical event like the Iranian hostages in the early 70s. That was it. We didn't care about anything else. We were under the assumption that financial markets were at the mercy of what we do, not at the mercy of, and we're not at the mercy of what they do. And we didn't have to worry about, really, technically, we didn't have to worry about whether it was a Democrat president, a Republican president, a Republican Congress, a Democratic Congress. Those things were irrelevant. They might have irritated us from an ideological perspective. If you were a Democrat or if you were a Republican, then that might have bothered you, but it didn't influence what you did. Today, we are living in a place where we've got to worry about what law could get passed and how the Supreme Court could rule with it or against it when it finally ends up there by being challenged by so many. And these are the kinds of things that we just can't factor in right now. And I think we need to understand a little bit more about the nature and the character. That's a terrible word to use, character, under these conditions, but the character of what we're dealing with. In other words, the character of, and I really mean that from a building block standpoint more than anything, that we're dealing with with the far left. Where are they? And we're only going to learn that as they progress forward.
Hey, remember to click the subscribe button right here on the screen. And don't forget to hit the notification bell so you'll be notified when new content is added. And more importantly than anything, you don't want to miss all 3 live hours of Financial Issues every day from 9 to noon. And you can watch it on FISM.tv. That's FISM.tv.